good morning, mushrooms, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and I'm all discombobulated. It's time to plug in, get the train chugging, and so, when the search for a perfect marriage goes wrong, well, that could be about anything and anywhere, so let's jump down to the caption and learn a little bit more. There's not a whole lot of language here, actually, but apparently South Korean authorities encourage men to marry foreign women, but those women then often become the victims of abuse, and that sounds like a pretty awful situation. But to encourage someone to do something, just a little bit of grammar there. With encourage, it's followed usually by the object, the person whom is receiving the encouragement, and then the full infinitive: to, marry, to, do, etc. You could say they recommend doing, they suggest doing, or then they encourage them to do. All right. Let's move on to what's always in the news, the coronavirus. Quite logical adjective here. It's extraordinarily widespread. Widespread being the adjective, and then here we've got the adverb, which then modifies the adjective, because adverbs modify verbs, but also modify adjectives. And widespread is pretty much what exactly you think it would mean. It is spread widely over a wide area, and so it's so extraordinarily widespread, it is everywhere. It is unavoidable in the US now. Either urban, rural, East Coast, West Coast, anywhere you go, you will find little pockets of COVID, and that is troubling. But all right, let's move on to Australia. And some good visual vocabulary here. The Premier of Victoria plunged the region into a state of disaster. It's been a while since we've had plunge on the show, and to plunge into something usually is like the way that you would dive into a pool or plunge into the water off a cliff. So you jump and then you go whoosh into the water, and so it implies a very rapid downward motion. Australia is not doing very good right now. So to plunge into a pool, to plunge into water, but it means to go down quickly. So you could also say, as a passive, he was plunged into debt, he was plunged into bankruptcy, something caused him to lose all his money, etc. But he plunged the region into a state of disaster because it's spreading like wildfire. Because, well, that's my own little play on words, because as we know, Australia has a problem with wildfires. Thankfully, it's not that right now. All right, whoa, there's a lag. Why people love Pocari Sweat. I have no idea what this is, but apparently it's some sort of thing that can be a cure for a hangover or some sort of emergency tonic. Now, tonic you probably know from mixing cocktails like a gin and tonic. However, really, a tonic and elixir is some sort of old-timey words for types of medicines which would cure problems. They functioned as remedies, vocab from last week, for various ailments like arthritis, where your joints hurt, or chronic indigestion, stomach pains, headaches, you name it. There was a tonic and or an elixir for everything. And so this one, apparently some people are using it as a cure for a hangover, when really there is no cure for a hangover, only time and hydration. Ah, okay, thank you. Japanese sports drink. Sure. I believe it. I don't want to drink anything sweat, but that's just my opinion. Let's move on to space news. Yes, the NASA and SpaceX, the astronauts in the Dragon capsule came back to Earth, and they splashed down safely, and so they had a splashdown, or they splashed down. It's really quite literally just what the phrasal verb says. And the capsule comes back to Earth suspended by a parachute, and then it lands in the ocean. So it splashes down into the ocean. But thankfully, they all got back safely, and ta-da! All right. We had it last week with John Lewis's funeral, and it was Obama to eulogize John Lewis. And here it is being used as a noun, Obama's eulogy. Now, for all my Zoolander fans out there, it's not an googly, it's a eulogy. That's the speech that is given at someone's funeral in order to memorialize him or her and celebrate or commemorate the different achievements that they had during their life. On to retail news. The famous, I think, women's fashion department store, Lord & Taylor, files for bankruptcy protection, and that's just the common use of files for legal processes. We file for divorce, file for bankruptcy, file criminal charges against somebody. And bankruptcy, yes, that's, as we well know from this show, that's when you don't have enough money to cover your liabilities, to pay your workers or your debts or otherwise, to file for bankruptcy. Though, just because you go bankrupt, yeah, or file for bankruptcy doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out of business because of these protections. Then you can reconsolidate debts and legal processes to then still stay in business. Yeah, good luck to them, to Lord and Taylor. On to India and a Bollywood star. A Bollywood star was discharged. There's a reduced passive there. Was discharged from hospital. To be discharged from a hospital means that they have released you and let you go free back into the world, and so that is a good thing. Was discharged from the hospital. They said, you've got a clean bill of health, or you don't need to be here anymore, and so go home. Wonderful. Here we've got another past simple passive, and it's not reduced, it's the full passive. A surfer was bitten by a shark in Florida. I don't know if it's the same guy. However, over the weekend I saw some other article where a man was bitten by a shark, but a couple years ago he also had been bitten. Ooh, like that, past perfect passive, had been bitten a few years back by an alligator. And so he's got two of the scariest animals in the water, and he has been attacked by both of them. And so he's got a little claim to fame that I never need to have. Right. And so, speaking of fires, now in Southern California, I think it's called the Apple Fire because it's probably near the Apple Complex. I don't actually know that. But so it's called the Apple Fire. And another passive here, and I would tend to go with the present perfect passive. Over 7,000 people have been evacuated because we're wanting to focus on the fact that they are out of danger. They are out of the way of the fire, and focusing on that current state of them being gone. Who knows, but in these times of climate change, we're going to be seeing more and more and more of these. I mean, I feel like we already have seen more and more since I was a kid, but that's just me. I don't know. Here we got 4 F's in a row. Working on some alliteration. Family, Flight, and Fortune fashioned India's very own sporting Wonder Woman. So her family, fighting for the championship or whatever, and fortune, in this case it means good luck, not riches. How those things fashioned their very own Wonder Woman. In this case, fashion means created, because, well, when you fashion something, think about fashion. It has to be designed and made and created. And so this is just another nice way of saying created. And they chose that word because of all of the F's here, and so it sounds very nice with that alliteration. Some people would say it's a cheap literary technique. However, I have a strong affinity for it. And it implies a little bit of labor and thought going into the process of creating something. Criminals will fashion a defense in court. It implies that maybe it was a little bit outlandish, a little bit crazy. They're putting in lots of things to try and create some sort of story. I'm doing a terrible job actually of fashioning an explanation for this, and so let's just move on. We had it a week or two ago, but come on now. To derail racial progress. How good white people. I've not read the article, but to derail something is to take it off the tracks and change the direction of something. When a train goes off the tracks, that is a bad thing. And so whenever something gets derailed by something else, we're talking about a negative situation that we would like to have be going the other way. All right, moving on. Just a nice phrase here. It has really not a whole lot of complex linguistic sort of things, but it is a nice metaphor. Beyonce's Black is King, I believe it's a new music video and maybe an album. It is a feast for the eyes. A feast is a very large meal, usually involved with some sort of celebration. Could be a wedding, a birthday, an anniversary, or any number of religious holidays or other things, and it's just a very large meal involving many different dishes, and it's very nourishing. And so this is a feast for the eyes, meaning there's, just like in a feast, there's many different dishes. Here there's a lot of stuff going on, and your eyes will be very happy watching it. It's a metaphor because it's very satisfying, very satiating, and there's a lot to see. On to then Asia, to Taiwan. and it could become the next flashpoint in the global tech war. A flashpoint is a place where if there's a spark and then things flare up very quickly, and so it's a point of very high tension where things could escalate, as I said, flare up, and then tensions could just mount to the point where something snaps and the situation ignites and it starts on fire. Those all metaphor for maybe some sort of battles going on, or tech battles of some point. Yes, I'm not so eloquent today. My apologies for that. The Middle East is a historical flashpoint for global conflicts. Let's move on. Here's a good phrase that we use for hard work. And so what good is a vaccine if Americans won't roll up their sleeves? And it's just like you're doing the office work and tra-la-la, using your computer and your calculator and tabulating things, but then there's some really hard work you have to do. So you unbutton your cuffs on your sleeves and you roll them up, because then you really got to get in there and do the hard work, yeah? First of all, because hard work makes you hotter and makes you sweat, but also then your cuffs won't get dirty, etc. To roll up your sleeves means to get in and do the real hard work. Moving on to a nice visual compound adjective here. The problem with Trump's hair-raising 2020 battle plan, it's hair-raising. It makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up because it makes you uneasy, it's creepy, it gives you a shiver, it sends a shiver down your spine. Ugh. Ooh, just by doing that, I gave myself goosebumps and the hair on my arm is standing up a little bit. And so if something is hair-raising, ooh, speaking of which, I just heard that they're going to come out with a 5th Scream movie. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Scream franchise, however, I guess they were pretty scary, and so you could say that they were hair-raising because our hair goes up when we're scared, when we're sometimes maybe disgusted, surprised, or shocked, but usually hair-raising, I guess, goes in hand with horror, with terror. Ooh, could be. All right, cool. And so, there's many different meanings for the word check, but here, it goes into the idea of the United States Constitution, where we've got the 3 main parts of government. We've got the executive branch, president, etc. We've got the legislative branch, the House of Representatives and the Senate, Congress, and then the judicial branch. And each one of them is able to check the power of the others and then stop them from making things happen. And so that way nobody can run away and just do whatever they want. The Congress has to pass the law, but then the president has to sign the law, and then if it's deemed illegal by the Supreme Court, they can cancel the law, and back and forth, back and forth. You also use roll up your sleeves in Turkey. I mean, I guess it's kind of logical. It probably exists in quite a few languages. Like I said, checks and balances, and to check somebody is to stop them, basically, in this case. We've had Brink on the show countless times. America is on a brink, like none, like no other brink since the Civil War. And so, as I've said, on the brink of collapse, on the brink of failure, on the brink of bankruptcy, on the brink of war. Many, many different brinks out there, and that's like the edge. Standing on the brink, imagine this white thing here is a cliff. If you're standing right here on the brink of a cliff, yeah, you could plummet to your death. And so brinks are never a good thing, basically. I mean, never say always and never say never in English, but we only have tendencies, and it is a very distinct tendency that this collocates with negative things, on the brink of something negative. And so, click the link, fill me in on the brink, let me know. Here we go. Distance yourself from Trump if necessary. And it's just a nice distance. We know it as a noun. The distance between A and B is approximately 59 kilometers. But here, we can also use it as a verb, and dare I say a phrasal verb, because we're always trying to, when we use it as a verb, distance ourselves from someone else, meaning that you don't want to be identified with them or that. You don't want to be connected to that person. And so put some distance between yourself and them, or distance yourself from them and their viewpoints, their positions, their... Alexander Vindman, he was the witness in the Trump impeachment trial, former military officer, immigrated to the United States from Ukraine as a young boy with his brother, who they both ended up becoming officers in the U.S. military. In a fiery Ooh, fiery, lots of fire, very hot, and yes, involving a lot of criticism, and he's angry. And it's titled an op-ed because they're saying it's that person's opinion, it's that person's editorial. They are editing their own work, and so therefore it's not necessarily the actual official position of the newspaper, just the opinion of that person. But it allows some people who aren't journalists to very vocally state their opinion in prominent news sources. So he kind of was forced into retirement as a retaliation for him having testified against the Orange Monster in the impeachment trial. Whew. All right, and Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she is a trooper, man. She worked through her fifth battle with cancer, whilst on the U.S. Supreme Court, and to help shape a blockbuster Supreme Court term. Yeah, lots of very important decisions have been given during this term, basically. But the point being the language. A bout means a fight or a battle, usually used with boxers. And so her fifth battle or fight with cancer, she worked through it to help shape a court term that was incredibly significant. It was really, really big. You probably know the word blockbuster from movies like the Summer Blockbuster, Transformers Part 9. But a blockbuster, I wasn't sure of the etymology of this because I just know it from the cinema. Blockbuster sales. And to bust something means to break it. To break it an idea into like a lot of pieces as well. And in this case, block actually does mean a city block. And it turns out this term came from World War II. And it was for the very, very large bombs that they were dropping on Germany that were large enough to completely level, to wipe out an entire city block. And so that's where the term came from. And now knowing that from the bombing of civilian targets, I don't want to use this word anymore because it just has a negative connotation to it. It is what it is. Monday morning, a bit of a lack of eloquence, and I could use a shave. And so we'll get things together and put on a better show for you tomorrow. For English Otherwise, this is breaking down the news as you know, and if you've made it this far, instead of Mr. James, you can call me Cameron. If you like what you see on the show here, please do click the like, subscribes, follows, thumbs ups, add some questions and comments, etc. If you do like it, or even if you don't, but you probably know somebody who would do, pass it along to a friend. Much love, and see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. sharp. Promise. Much love. Have a great day and a good start to your week. Bye-bye. Yes, stop the stream.